Okay, can everyone hear me online as well? Yeah. So welcome to the meeting of the Sustainable Development Committee. Unfortunately, we've had apologies from the Chair, Councillor Donald Crichton, and Vice Chair, Councillor Norman MacDonald. So I'd like to invite nominations for Chairman for this meeting, please.
I nominate Duncan McInnes.
Okay.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so that's Duncan McInnes. I'd like to invite you up to chair the meeting. Oh, yes, sorry. Any other nominations? No? Okay, thank you.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of Sustainable Development Committee, which is conducted from the Chamber and remotely through Microsoft Teams. The meeting is now being recorded. Please ensure your microphones are off. And before we begin, I will ask Councillor John A. McKeever to lead us in prayer.
We thank you for those that have facilitated this meeting and that we are able to discuss, debate and decide on the best way forward for the various topics we have on the agenda here today. We thank you for all our staff, those that have performed, that have taken part in reading up these reports for us, those that have helped us perform our own duties as well, Lord. Every time we ask for help, they are more than willing to give us that help. Indeed, we thank all our staff, every single one, from the bud to Barrowhead and all that lie in between. The wonderful work that they do for us, and we ask that you be with them and give them strength, and that they're able to perform their duties to the best of their abilities. Sometimes when they have very difficult, stressful decisions to make, that you be with them and that you encourage them and that you help them. We think of all on our islands, Lord, all those that are needing help at this time as well, because times are hard. We are in unprecedented times with the cost of living becoming harder and harder to bear. We ask that you be with those that are in need of comfort at this time. Help them to live through these difficult, dark days that lie ahead and fulfill them with happy memories of days gone by. We ask you to be with those that are in ill health at this time, be it mental or physical. We especially think of our Vice Chair here, Norman, just now, and hope that he returns to good health as soon as possible after his medical intervention. Be with Duncan as he chairs this meeting today in place of Donald, who's not unable to be with us. Lord, we think of our children as well, Lord, and we ask that they look to you in the days of their youth, before the dark days of evil and temptation draws nigh. Help us come to decisions that will benefit all those that we are here to represent today. Give us the humility to understand that there are some things that we cannot change. Give us the courage to change those things that we can. And Lord, give us the wisdom to know the difference. So go before us now and forgive us our many sins. We ask it all in your wonderful and glorious name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKeever. In regard to the conduct of the meeting, a reminder on the following. If you are a member of the committee attending remotely, please leave your camera on and your microphone off. Officers attending remotely, please leave both off unless you are called to speak to a report or answer a question. A reminder to members and officers in the chamber of the queuing system. The chair controls the mic. First in the queue flashes green and the remainder are solid green. The chair will allow each flashing mic in, which will then change to red. Only 2 mics on the floor will be red at any one time. If you wish to come back on a question, please leave your mic on, and officers speaking to the report, I would advise you to do the same. Committee members will be given priority. In regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and will be available on the COLA's website following the meeting. And just before we begin, as Councillor McKeever did say in his prayer, we express our sincere thanks and hope that our Vice Chair, Councillor Norman MacDonald, will be returned to good health following his recent time off for his attendance in Glasgow for his illness. And we hope it won't be long till we see him back here in full health. So on behalf of all the committee, would like to express our thanks for a speedy recovery to Councillor MacDonald. And first item on the agenda is the minute of the meeting of 29th November 2022. Are you all happy for approval of that minute? Yeah, thanks. Declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items of the agenda. It would be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Members in the chamber, please do so now by pressing your microphone on or remotely through Teams by using the raised hand function. Please ensure that declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to the protocol as previously indicated. Anyone got any declarations of interest in any other agenda items? No, that's fine. So as we discuss anything, sorry, Grant.
I just declare an interest in item 9, renewables, and a company I'm a director of is working for Northland Power on a consultancy basis.
That's fine. That's noted. Moving on to the next item, which is Stornoway Deepwater Terminal update. This report provides an update on the Stornoway Deepwater Terminal development. I would like to welcome to the meeting Mr. Alec MacLeod from Stornoway Port Authority. Is down in front of me to my left. He will be giving us a presentation on the development progress for the Deepwater Terminal, and I will ask Kathleen Morrison to speak to the introductory report, followed by the presentation by Mr. MacLeod. And as we see as a caller, have been involved with Stornoway Port Authority. This is a huge project that will be transformational for the islands, and particularly those of Lewis and Harris, with the attraction and the number of cruise liners in particular that would be coming in. And the COLA have been heavily involved in partnership with Stornoway Port Authority, and we saw that at the weekend the update from the Deputy First Minister, and who was in attendance, and we're very glad that things are progressing on time and on budget. So Kathleen, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just Chair was saying, this report carries on from the report that went to last committee about the cruise forum, and because the cruise industry will be benefiting so much from the Deepwater Terminal, forthcoming Deepwater Terminal, we thought it'd be useful for members to have an update on the status of the terminal, and as it has been a while since one was provided. So Alec MacLeod, Chief Executive of Stornoway Port Authority, will be able to has a presentation and some films to show you.
Thanks for inviting me along. Just realised my notes are actually on the document, so I'm trying to remember it now. in relation to this, the deepwater terminal, when we started this sort of project maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the intentions was for large cruise ships. We wanted a replacement for the Pier number 1 link span. You know, the Pier number 1 link span we have in Stornoway is now 1971, so it's actually almost 50, well, it's over 50 years old. The oil and gas industry, there's no pier or sort of quayside on the west coast who's really able to work with the oil and gas industry and things. Oil storage, there's the oil storage tanks in the middle of Stornoway. It's been a council's intention for some time now to remove these from the town. It's interesting the way that's gone over the last couple of years. You know, one minute we're getting rid of them. I think 2 years ago with energy transition, oh no one's investing in sort of putting up new oil and gas storage anywhere. You go back to everyone sort of maybe in the last 6 months and people are investing in oil and gas storage again. So things have, in the past 5 years, they've gone up, they've gone down, they're coming back. But the original idea of moving the storage out of Stornoway, it's still there and it's still relevant. Renewable energy, I know you guys do a lot of in relation to renewable energy here. When we started on this, offshore wind wasn't a big factor. Offshore wind is now a massive factor in what we're doing out there. And basically, the deepwater berth can be used for any industry. You know, even sort of large pelagic boats sheltering over the winter, layup berths over the winter, there's a lot of opportunities. Which button? We just move it on to the next one. It's not me, it's the technology. Here we go. So that's the picture of what we're actually building. That shows the renewable side of it, with a large berth coming alongside. What a lot of people don't understand is the berth at Darnish, it's not a deep water berth. It's only 6 meters deep. The berth that we're building here is 10 meters deep. That's going to have it'll allow major opportunities to be developed by Harland and Wolff at the Arnish yards going forward. So that's what we're building. And if you move it on to the next slide, that's where we are today. So today, what you're seeing out there, we started off by blasting the road. You're seeing that up in the top left. There's no pointer or anything, no. Up the top left, you're seeing the wee track on down to the site. Then they came along all around the outside. They built a bund of stone, and then there's a wee pond there at the top where that brown material is. That whole lot is a pond on the 5th of January. As of tomorrow, there's no water left in there. We've actually moved, I think it's about 750,000 tonnes of dredge material from the seabed in the harbour, and we've moved it in there to create the platform area. That's all happened in the last 4 weeks, and the dredging is, I think it's going to be finished in the next 2 days. The piling, you're seeing the steel piles along the outside. They've actually had to stop that in the last couple of weeks just to let the dredging sort of get finished. The piles on the main quay walls are probably about 70% complete, but there's more piling to be done with the berthing dolphin. Just so you understand, the pipe that you're seeing at the bottom left part of the screen, what actually happens is the ship out in the harbour, the causeway, it sucks the sand and gravel off the seabed in the harbour into the hold, and then it pumps it via that pipe ashore into the reclamation area. That's how the 750,000 tonnes was put in there in the last few weeks. It's quite significant, and the dredging, that's a major milestone for the project now finished. As Duncan said, the project, it's on time, it's on budget. It's, I'm not saying there's no challenges. Construction projects, there is always challenges that you have to resolve as you're going through, but we have a good working relationship with the contractor. Things are going okay so far. So I'll just move on. Just some of the quantities. It's 425,000 cube, I think 750,000 tonnes. We've drilled and blasted about 575,000 tonnes of rock. The piling's about 70% complete, and this project should be finished in October, November this year. And then just move on. Scotland, as I said earlier, when we started this with Scotland, these 4 projects, and I think we've got potential to work on all these 4 projects in the top left of the screen. That was not available when we started this. So we always knew there was going to be other things developing. It has, and there will be other things in the future developing as well. So that's really the energy side of it. Just moving on to the next screen. In relation to cruise industry, and I think I've explained this before, but I'll just explain it again. In relation to the cruise industry, it's not about we have a nice boat come into a port. It's all to do with whether you fit into an itinerary or not. And the way Stornoway is, we're 240 miles from Belfast, 260 from Glasgow. A cruise ship leaves a port at 7 in the evening, arrives at another one at 7 in the morning. 20 knots, 12 hours, 240 nautical miles. We're in the right place. That's why they want to come into us. So it's actually to do with the itineraries. They can't get to Kirkwall and to Invergordon from Belfast to Greenock in one overnight. So they're actually driving past us during the day. That's why we were so confident in relation to this project and how it actually works. If you move on, I'll talk a wee bit in a minute about next year and the year after. Just put this video on. Some of you might have seen this. This is actually on our website. This is on our website, and there's actually another one on our website for the energy industry as well. I'll stop talking for a wee minute. Okay. Moving on. I just want to show a couple of slides. This is more about what happens when they do come ashore. This vessel here that you're seeing came into Stornoway in 2016. There was 3,000 passengers ashore. We didn't hear any complaints. We just heard a lot of positivity about that vessel that day. These vessels, without Deepwater Port, you might get maybe 1 or 2 of them a year. With Deepwater Port, we're going to get a lot more. So if we move on to the next one, 2022, we had 20,000 passengers. We had 4 vessels over 1,000 passengers. 2023 it's kind of an unusual, it's kind of a freak year actually. What's actually happened is that a lot of the cruise lines thought we were going to be ready of a project, so they booked in vessels. We couldn't guarantee it to them, but they booked in anyway. And the other one is the war in Ukraine means that St. Petersburg is off limits for cruise ships. The jewel in the crown of a Baltic cruise is St. Petersburg. So they've stopped a lot of these and they're coming up to around the UK instead. 2023, we have 30 vessels over 1,000 passengers. Now, are we going to get overrun with passengers? The reason I explain this, 3,000 passengers from one vessel in one day in 2016. We cope with that quite easily. Going forward, last year we had 4 days of over 1,000 passengers. When Deepwater Port opens, we're going to have over 50 days. But it's not going to be much more than the 3,000 passengers we had off that vessel in 2016. What's actually going to happen here is we're not going to get overrun with cruise passengers. We're just going to have a lot more busy days rather than 1 or 2 extreme days. It's going to be a lot more busy days. So last year, 4 busy days in town. This year, 30. Next year, possibly over 50. Just a lot more busy days. So in relation to us being flooded with cruise ship passengers, we don't have to be worried about it. We should be just seeking to grasp the opportunities that are out there of all of these visitors coming ashore. The other side of it is when you do open Deepwater Terminal in 2024, the crew will be able to come ashore. They can't just now. And normally with passengers, they might spend £47 a head. The crew will maybe spend about £12.50. And you will get, if there's 50,000 passengers, you'll get 15,000 crew. It's a lot of opportunities still out there. Just move on to the next one. That's Kirkwall on a busy day. There's 3,000 passengers in the one on the left. There's 3,000 passengers in the one in the middle, and there's 1,000 passengers in the one on the right. We won't allow that to happen here. We can't, because that's 7,000 passengers. That'll overrun our community, and it'll just be all the good work that we're actually trying to do to make this a success just out the window. It's pointless. These 3 vessels would have had a difficult day ashore anyway, and I don't think that I've left very happy any of them. So if we move on, just in relation to some of our existing shore excursions, they're very, very popular. I was saying that at our meeting at the weekend. The likes of about 3 years ago, one of our shore excursion companies said that the trip down to Luskentyre was the most popular trip that they had. It was just a drive down to Luskentyre and a drive back. We were surprised at that. Yeah, McKeever from the Trust said it's because they were driving through lochs, but not 100% certain. That was the jewel in it. But you know, we do have good excursions, but we need to create a lot more. I'll just hurry up now because I think I'm eating into your time a wee bit. The one thing that we're not good at doing, and I think when you were talking about the Cruise Forum, Gaelic cultural events, there's nothing here. We should be commercialising that and doing a lot more with it. Peat cutting, I know it sounds ridiculous, but you can't sell tours for doing that. The likes of sheep shearing, all of these things, there's a lot of things, opportunities out there that we should actually be progressing. And that's just some of the other ones. Personally, I don't think we promote the Lewis Testament enough. That's something that it should be in your face all around the place. But again, that's the sort of thing that we promote to our passengers. And then the final slide, it's actually another video. This is more about the construction, just how it's worked over the past few weeks. It's just the dredging. Gives you a wee bit of an idea how it was actually done. There's a serious mistake in the Gaelic spelling. We know about it, but they said that they couldn't change it. You will all figure it out when you see it. Just as well Sweeney's not going to be here. That's them pumping the dredge material ashore. It was a Dutch contractor. Yeah, more like Point Gaelic, actually. There we go. That's me. That's all I have, just as an update.
Well, thanks very much, Alec, for that excellent presentation, and clearly a transformational project, you know, that will look at not all your excellent in one basket. You're talking about renewables, tourism, and various aquaculture, and I think it would be useful for us as board members to get a visit out there, you know, when the weather gets better, you know, committee in sustainable development, and we have a look, so that we firstly get a feel of the size of the yard. And I've been out, but others haven't, you know, that we see the multifunctional elements to it, you know, that's currently there already, and with hydrogen and all the other huge opportunities that are there. So thanks very much. Anyone got any questions that asked to Councillor MacLeod, convener?
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Alec, for that very, very interesting presentation. And the Port Authority are to be highly commended for taking this project forward. I know it was a long-term aspiration of the Port Authority, you know, to improve the facilities they had, and they certainly are going that step further. It's going to bring huge opportunities, you know, not just to Stornoway, but, you know, to the islands. And it's really great to see, and it's going to be so good to see the job when it's finished, and that we're going to see, you know, a boom in more cruise ships coming to Stornoway. You showed there a slide of 3 cruise ships in Kirkwall the one day. I think I might have been there. I think it was September 21. September 21.
Probably spent more than they did.
Yes, yeah. And it was an absolute nightmare. I know what you mean, but my fear is, and you know, it shouldn't be a fear and a concern I have about, you know, the most popular tourism destinations in Lewis and Harris. You know, some of them, they don't have adequate roads going to them, things like that. And also, you know, if there's a cruise ship in with 3,000 passengers, I know what they do in the likes of Invergordon. Say if there's a cruise ship in with 5,000 passengers, half go out in the morning and half go out in the afternoon. I don't know, is that what you do here with the, say, a 3,000? But I don't think we have the buses here to take passengers, you know, around the islands. But you have to be commended for taking this project forward, and it's going to be a huge boost to the economy. Thanks.
Just one, I'll just answer back on your comment about the lack of buses. Yeah, lack of buses is going to be an issue at the beginning, but we need to be able to look at the opportunities out there. We have the castle grounds out there. There's walking tours from the castle grounds. Brilliant place to take cruise ship passengers. We have the castle there. Cultural concerts in the castle. There is a lot of things we can sell to these people coming ashore. We need to grasp it and take, you know, the entrepreneurial spirit needs to come out in the island and take full advantage of these opportunities. But yeah, there are issues, and there are going to be issues in relation to, say, the Garnan Road. We've got to figure out a way around it. Planning. A lot of planning can go into these things to make it a wee bit easier for the community and just time the buses in and out. The one thing about the cruise industry, the buses are timed to the minute. Now, I was at a meeting in Calnice there 2 years ago, last summer, for the Calnice Centre, and they were moaning about, oh, today or yesterday, there was buses just came into the Calnice Centre, and they were complaining to me about it. There was no cruise ship in that day. It was other buses. You know, so if you're seeing a lot of buses in the island, it's not necessarily cruise buses.
Yes. Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I had a similar experience. One time I was in Kirkwall and it was overrun that day, and it was an unpleasant experience, I'm sure, for local residents and the people themselves and others, you know, tourists and visitors who happen to be there. So I'm glad to hear that that would not be what would be happening here. There was a couple of points. I think it's a fantastic development, great opportunities. What sort of town centre are they going to see? You know, with M&Co shutting, you know, what can we do? What can we be looking at to ensure that they're not coming to a town that's maybe a bit of a shell? And I think we really need to be thinking about that for the town centre, and looking at ways that, you know, maybe go beyond retail to keep a vibrant town centre for people to be visiting. But I think, you know, hats off to the Port Authority for the work. And I think the last time I saw your presentation was way back at May in Lounther, and I remember asking then about educational opportunities, and I believe there have been plenty of opportunities for primary and secondary school children to see what's been going on. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks for that, Councillor Murray. Just following on from that, Councillor Murray, the island still, you know, very much addresses, you know, the infrastructure requirements that we'll be looking at, particularly on the tourism side out with Stornoway. And as you rightly say, we have to make sure that the town itself is fit for purpose for the number of people that are coming in. Kathleen.
Just to add that we, as the Cruise Forum as well, we've come together for the 2 points that were raised, and that's one of the main reasons for that, to make sure that we can look at various things, whether it is the aspects of the numbers that will be coming in, the buses, and working with the communities and the businesses to try and see how we can go forward. And there will be a cruise destination development manager in post who's going to be leading on the actions of that as well, and will be hopefully issuing information about that soon. So we have taken that into consideration. That's what the Cruise Forum is includes, which the CORLA, the SPA, United Hebrides Tourism and Visit Scotland are members of.
Councillor MacLean.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Alec, for your presentation, and hats off to yourself and your visionary spirit over the past years. I think we were involved in many years ago through the Stornoway Trust, and certainly it's really encouraging to see the stage it's at the moment. One question I would like to ask is, you've talked about the scenic walking route through the castle grounds. Now, many of us who frequent the castle grounds will say it's a brilliant place. As you said, you don't need that many buses if you could sell the castle grounds, because the castle grounds in itself is a wonderful experience for those who walk through it. Is the scenic walking route part of the project? I don't see it. I can't see it in here, but is it part of the project to put a track, or am I missing it?
There is a track going from the bridge at the on the Crete down to the Deepwater Terminal, but we've also agreed with Stornoway Trust that we will work together, the two of us, to get we as a Port Authority will start it off by getting some sort of design of a bridge, and then ourselves and the Trust will obviously work together to get a bridge over the mouth of the Crete, just to reduce that walking distance in town. So yeah, that will be joined up, and the route will go all the way in town.
There is, I think I'm still not on. Of course, there is the fact that the CORLA were involved with the Parks for People, and that has done a significant uplift to the castle grounds as well. The castle grounds is not what it was. It's a fantastic place to visit.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I'm looking at time. You know, time's against us, so thanks very much. Oh, sorry, Angus. Last one.
Thank you, Chair. And again, Alec, thank you for a comprehensive presentation. I mean, personally, I hadn't realised the amount of work that was going on out there, but looking at that presentation, it's very impressive. Could we get that presentation shared to members to disseminate out to our community councils and various, because we're asked a lot of questions about what's happening in Stornoway and what's going on with the Deepwater Port Authority. That was one of the questions, but the other question, and I agree with Stornoway Trust factor, just the lochs element as attracting people down to Harris. But on that, I mean, when I was looking at that presentation, I could see a lot of potential for development. You know, not just, we've done the Stornoway side of it, but we've also got en route, and I mentioned lochs again, just for the sake of going down to Harris. There are other areas obviously as well. But there are small opportunity ventures in lochs, I think, that could possibly benefit widely from a financial input from usual passengers. But I'm throwing this one back to ourselves and the council. Do we have the development support in place to support the requirements that will be needed? And I can see there's going to be a lot of potential through this. Stornoway Port Authority have done a great bit of work with this, but I just fear for the smaller ventures, do we have the support mechanism in place to if there was somebody who was wanting to kind of put a project forward? I know Kathleen's working hard in the team here, and it's probably not a question for Kathleen to answer. It may need to come to yourself, Deputy Chief Executive. Because I've got grave reservations that we don't have the personnel in place to facilitate what the requirements we are going to need. And my final point is the roads network. The roads network that we have going from A to B, we've highlighted a few destinations. I'll take from Stornoway to Luskintyre, for instance, the main spinal route part of it. We've got over to Callanish again, the roads there. We should really be progressing, and I know we haven't got the money as a council authority to do this. We haven't had any levelling up fund, which was a disappointment, which would have gone towards the roads as well. But I think we need to prioritise our road network, get cycleways along the side of the roads. So we're going to have all these buses travelling on the roads as well. So there's quite a lot in there, but great potential and great opportunities. Thank you.
I'll pass over to Column.
Thank you, Chair. And I would obviously agree very much with Councillor Morrison. There is a huge opportunity here, and it's going to be up to communities to grasp that opportunity. And I'm quite heartened, and I think the communities are going to do that. I know the Cruise Forum have facilitated events where there was over 100 people in attendance. I was on the west side last week, and I was talking to 3 community estates who are already beginning to develop and think their way through the type of packages that they're going to be offering cruise visitors. So they very much see real opportunity in their communities to be developing some of the bespoke packages Alex spoke about in his presentation around cultural activity, cultural events, peat cutting and all the rest of it. So that is beginning to emerge already. And I think we've got to encourage all communities to be thinking of what the opportunities are for them. So it won't be development officers who will create that opportunity. It is communities and individual businesses themselves. I think we have within the council's economic development team and within the Highlands and Islands development team and within Business Gateway, a range of officers who are there to support and help communities who come forward with ideas. So I think there is a support network there if community businesses are coming forward with ideas. As you mentioned, it's hugely disappointing, the outcome of the Levelling Up Fund. Members will know the scale and the size of the colony's own capital programme, and it's certainly not going to be able to deliver everything we aspire to in regard to the road network and other infrastructure. So we're hopeful of getting feedback shortly from Levelling Up Fund. My understanding at the moment is that they think the projects we submitted were good, but they require technical tweaking. Exactly what that means, I don't know yet, but they're certainly encouraging us to resubmit into the next round of the Levelling Up Fund. So although we haven't been successful in this round, I'm still hopeful that we may be able to get something out of a subsequent round of the Levelling Up Fund. And as I say, that Levelling Up Fund money is going to be absolutely critical if we are going to achieve what we need to achieve on our roads and other forms of infrastructure. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks very much, Colm Young, for that report, and thanks very much, Alec, for an excellent presentation. So if we move on to the next item on the agenda, performance management 2022 to 23 and Q3. The report is for noting and provides an overview of the Communities Directorate business plan progress and related performance for Q3, and Deputy Chief Executive will speak to the report and answer any questions later. Colm Young.
Thank you, Chair. It is a very busy agenda, so I'm going to be very brief with my comments. Happy to report that of our 34 actions, 32 of them are running to target, with 2 of them running slightly behind target. The areas behind target are in our cultural and heritage services, but we're hopeful to bring these back on target in Q4 and as we go into the next financial year. At 16.9, outline about the RCGF, and I'm glad to report that Economic Development Service have been successful in 2 projects under RCGF, one for £2 million for the new development at the Colony Centre, which is part of the development we have to have achieved to get our visitor attractions up to spec when to be ready for the cruise vessels. The other successful project was 150,000 to new business units being brought forward by Storras Uist down at Loch Carnan. 6.23, a note there, and members will be aware, but I think it's worth noting that Ofgem approved a new 1.8 gigawatt interconnector in December, which will help unleash the renewable potential. There is a more substantive report on the agenda, and we can talk about that in more detail at that time. 6.53 outlines that our investment plan to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund was approved by the UK government in December, which gives us £2.2 million worth of shared prosperity funding to invest in communities and place, supporting local businesses and people and skills. 6.53 outlines how that will be spent. And as we mentioned in the previous discussion, it is really, really disappointing that we haven't been successful with the Levelling Up Fund. I noted, some of the feedback we are waiting from the government, and hopefully we can move to around 3 with the levelling up fund. Happy to leave it at that at the moment, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks very much, Colm. Anyone got any questions for Colm? Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just under 6.4, it refers to the affordable housing programme, and a further 42 units are going through for assessment, financial appraisal or planning.
No, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie, you're at the wrong agenda item.
That's not like me.
Huh?
Oh, it's
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought we were discussing at housing, so sorry.
sorry. I was getting a bit worried here that I was losing myself. Maybe I am, but no. At that point, for the 42 units, it mentions 6 units in Leverborough. And I just wondered, originally there was talk of 12 units in Leverborough, and obviously you've got a severe lack of housing down in Harris, among other places, but particularly in Harris. So I was just wondering, maybe a wee bit of clarification on that regarding what's holding anything, holding this up. Or why should it be 6? Or why is it 12? Or is it 6? Or is it 11 or 10 or what? Maybe Mr. Watson could fill me in on that one. Thank you.
Ian.
Thanks, Chair. As members will see from the report, the proposed development at Leverborough is going through the sort of assessment and feasibility stage at the moment. And initially, it was looked at the possibility of 6 houses in the first phase and the potential for a further phase of maybe another 6 houses. So at the moment, that's still being discussed between HHP and Tyke Gal, who are acting as their agents, and the planning service. And that will help inform that final outcome. We understand that the discussions are ongoing between the two bodies, and they're hoping to submit the planning application next month in March, and hopefully we'll have a better idea of the likely unit numbers at that time, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it's a case of TIG on behalf of HHP sending in a planning application next month. And then
That's my understanding of the situation. So once the planning application is submitted to the Corla, I would imagine they'll look at the overall site and what could be achieved on that site. Is that right, yeah? So we'll have an update in a month's time when the planning application is submitted to Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Just to add to that conversation about Leverborough, I think there is a discussion about more units than 6 at the moment. That discussion is ongoing, and I would hope that at least 10 units will be in that development. And I think we should be maximising the amount of development potential on that site. And I would be hopeful that by the time the discussion between HHP, TIG and the planners is concluded, that site will be able to accommodate more than 6.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan.
Thanks, Chair. It was really just to get more information in terms of things are changing, and we're really not always hearing about it. So, and my initial understanding was it was 12 units, and then it's suddenly gone down to 6. It went to 6, and now we're talking about 10. And myself and Councillor Thornton here are not being kept in that. We don't really keep being kept in the loop, and I think that's maybe a bit of an issue generally, that we're not always know what's happening ourselves, So it would be much useful if we can get updates before, and also if it's going into planning at 10, for example, it's not really a possibility that it can go to 12, is it? So really, we want that information really before it goes to planning, so we can actually discuss it and actually get some more information on it, because we're finding things are changing and we're not always being kept in the loop about what's happening, So if that would be, you know, I'd sort of really like to see that happening if possible.
So Ian, will you make sure that Councillor, well, I'll take in Councillor Fulton just now.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just really to concur with Councillor Finnegan. We'd be obviously very keen to have more than 12 houses down there. It's nowhere near the housing need in the area, and we can refer to the housing need and demand assessment, which is further on in the agenda. I think both myself and Councillor Finnegan feel that there's a excellent area of land there at Ferry Road, and we really need to utilise it as much as we possibly can in that area. It's a substantial area, and it's surely suitable for several homes. And just finally, I hope that there will be significant community engagement in regard to the houses which are going to be located there, and the location on Ferry Road. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Fulton. Ian, you'll keep both Councillor Finnegan and Councillor Fulton in the loop as things progress. Yeah. Councillor McLean.
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to say, yeah, we'll arrange the information from HSP and TIG on a regular basis and keep the local members up to date.
That's fine.
As members will be aware, HSP are leading with this project. It's not one that we're leading on, so we'll get the information from them and TIG and pass it back.
That's fine, thanks. Councillor McLean.
Chair, so I'm not a member of your committee. I should have stated that before, but how accurate is the SHIP model that we've got here? Because as I read it, there is 6 houses in Leverborough, but I don't see any more throughout 2024, 25, 26. Maybe I'm picking it up wrong. I see Scott Road with 14 and Scott Road again with 10. How accurate is this SHIP? Because when you look at this SHIP, you say to yourselves, is what is in the SHIP, that is the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, how accurate is it today? Is it up to date or whatever? Because that would maybe feed in with what Councillor Finnegan says and what Councillor Fulton say, that they're not being updated on it. Is it moving? Is it moving every year, or what? As maybe Mr. McKeever can.
I'll pass on to Colm Ian.
Yes, members will be aware the SHIP comes in front of you once a year. So in that sense, it is an ever evolving document. It evolves as we go along. So you'd hope that the early years in the SHIP, years 1 and 2, are fairly accurate because we're well sighted on the development. But years 3, 4 and 5 are aspirational. So we put down in the further years areas that we want to build new houses in. So that then is dependent on land supply, getting land in a particular locality. And as we know, we might put into the SHIP that we aspire to do, that we aspire to do 20 in our locality. When that goes through the process of feasibility, both the desktop feasibility and the detailed feasibility undertaken by TIG, your initial assumption may have been wrong. The site may not be able to accommodate 20 anymore. They can now only accommodate 10. Equally, it may accommodate 25. So the SHIP is accurate in the first couple of years. It is accurate until the feasibility is done. Then a project may move slightly up and down, and years 3 and 4 are slightly more aspirational, where we're trying to target particular areas. Happy if Mr. Watson has got anything additional to add to it.
Thanks, Chair. I think that the nature of the SHIP is that flexibility. It can be adapted quite quickly to take account of changing circumstances. And members should be aware of the changing circumstances. Many of the sites we have looked at, they looked to have plenty of potential, but after feasibility, like the director said, they didn't stack up financially, or there wasn't enough room there. So it's good having that flexibility in the SHIP, so we can react quite quickly to take advantage of any windfall sites that appear as well as the ones we're cited of. So that flexibility is really useful.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to come in there then. If that is the case, then we're now in February 2023. If Leverborough there was 6, Blackwater is going 36. We're seeing it. It's been going, and you've got Benbecula 4, Bernera 4, Lewis South Lochs 4. you would have expected at this stage for the that much more than you would than a development. You would have expected actually to see foundations on these sites. Is it because HHP are not delivering for us, or what is the problem? Would you agree, Chair, that you would expect 23, 24, because we're now moving on to 24, 25, where there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sites there, you would have expected more than consultation between the landowner and HHP or whoever, or council. You would have expected more than what Mr. Watson says at this present time.
Thanks, Chair. I think that demonstrates the kind of challenges ourselves and HSP and the planners have in developing the affordable housing programme. Loads of sites look like they've got lots of potential, but like I said, as you delve deeper into it, issues come to light that have to be solved. And there's been several cases, several sites over the last couple of years that have dragged on for a huge amount of time before they've reached the stage of getting planning permission in or getting them on site. That's just down to the nature of the land we're dealing with. We've discussed one on the outskirts of Stornoway that took a year to get the cropping resumption done. So things like that add into the whole timescale that we're having to deal with. And even some small schemes that look straightforward have got issues as well. So it's just the nature of the sites we're dealing with. There's very few are totally perfect for developing houses. There's issues that have to be contended with, and unfortunately, some of these issues can take a long time to resolve. But we're in regular touch with HSP. They're good at giving us updates on the issues, but sometimes it's out with their control as well before these particular issues get.
Yeah, well, just to conclude at this, it's obvious, that any feasibility study will flag up challenges, and each site will be different for whatever reason. Huh? Sorry.
That should all be in the planning prior to February 2023. That should all be in the planning. You talk about feasibility studies. That feasibility study should have been done last year. If we're talking about 23, 24, build on these, how accurate then is the other ones? Are we quite way forward with Benbecula, Bernard Lewis? Do you know any sites in Bernard Lewis that's been?
Well, there is a site, yeah.
Are they anywhere near it?
No.
Am I being wrong in saying that we're behind? I think you see.
With all due respect, Councillor McLean, the officers have told us, that the stage that this site is at, the challenges they've been facing, at various sites, and we can take it back. There's a housing MOUG, you see, that can be discussed in more detail, I would say. And I would say that those kind of issues are more relevant to the housing MOUG to make sure, in discussion with those that will also be present to take it forward, to the next stage. And I would say that that's where that should be taken, as an action from. Yeah. Yeah. And, with item 14 on the agenda, Councillor McLean, there's the time to revisit it.
Yes, but I'm just saying that what is presented to us here, I think it's somebody took up section 6.4 today.
Yeah,
we're presented with these figures here. But what I'm asking is these figures realistic as regards the ship and how are we doing? That's all I'm asking.
Will you do a final summing up, Colin?
I'll do a final summing up. The figures at 6.4 are 100% accurate. That is exactly where we are right now. Now, these figures, some of them will be at variance with the ship, because as we said in the ship, you're targeting numbers. As you do feasibility, the numbers may go up or down slightly. The challenge we've got is multifaceted. It is to do with land supply. It is to do with the sale of land. It is to do with the financing of a project. So sometimes you will get an offer of land. It looks credible. You spend a lot of money doing feasibility, and suddenly you find that land isn't credible anymore. You may do a lot of land and spend a lot of time developing on that land for the landowner to suddenly not want to sell to you anymore, or to sell to HHP. Each project has to go through a financial appraisal, and it has to fit in with a financial benchmark. If it doesn't fit within that benchmark, you could have spent a year developing it and that project falls at the last hurdle. And we're in a cost environment at the moment where costs have accelerated significantly and the government intervention benchmark hasn't moved at all. And the final point I would make is in regard to HHP. I think HHP are doing really, really well on the programme at the moment. I think they are working as hard as they can on the programme. We would all wish that they weren't facing some of the challenges they're facing, but you know, we are all collectively in a difficult situation. But I think ourselves, TIG, HHP and Scottish Government colleagues are working as hard as we can to deliver as much housing as we can.
Thanks very much. And as I said, further discussion can take place, you know, under the later item on the agenda, and certainly at the member officer working group, you know, for housing, where others will be. So thanks very much. So we move on the agenda then to, insofar as, do you members agree to note the report as voted? Yep, thanks very much. Moving on to planning. This report presents the Scottish Government's feedback on the annual planning performance framework report for 2021-22. Despite many challenges, the service performance has continued to remain ahead of the Scottish average. And I must stress, you know, that it's good performance from a small core planning team that are working very hard and under very challenging circumstances. And the performance indicators are very good for that team. And I'll ask Morag Ferguson and Mary McKeever, they'll speak to the report and answer any questions. So who's coming in first? Mary.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as the Chair said, this report presents feedback from Scottish Government for our annual planning performance report for the period 2021-22. The report received positive feedback, very positive feedback, with 13 out of the 15 set performance markers green, with positive feedback on the report's narrative and case studies presented, and no reds, which is welcome. The feedback positively highlighted cross-working and engagement with stakeholders and with members. The two ambers relate to decision-making and an increase in stalled legacy cases due to continued service demands and the backlog of casework placing unsustainable demands on a small team of officers. Pressure continues on the service in terms of caseload and complexity of cases and continued staffing and recruitment issues. While the PPF process itself is fairly crude, the red, amber, green system, it is good to receive this positive feedback from government and the narrative within that. Government has put planning performance reporting on a statutory footing following on from the 2019 Planning Act. The government feedback also notes the intention to support full cost recovery aligned with increased planning fees, but the changes in planning fees have had very limited impact here, given the types of development that we have here. And that's largely tied, and also the fee recovery would be tied into development management functions, not development planning, which will see an increased workload in the foreseeable period under the new development planning regs and other actions emanating from the 2019 Planning Act. The report and the appendices are for noting, but happy to take any questions.
Anyone got any questions for Mary or Morag? No, that's fine. So do members agree the recommendation at 3.1? Thanks. To move on to next item, Cornwall response to National Park consultation. This report presents the Cornwall's response to Nature Scots consultation on national parks. The consultation period fell out with the committee series, and homologation is therefore sought on the Cornwall's response provided as the appendix to the report. And Mary McKeever and Modo Mackay will speak to the report and answer any questions. Mary.
Chair. This report sets out the Cornwall's response prepared for the latest consultation on national parks, which has been devolved to Nature Scot to deliver on behalf of government. This is the process for designating at least one new national park by 2026. The appendix sets out the context, questions and Corla's responses to the consultation, which was prepared by Murdo Mackay and myself. It was our view that the process was significantly lacking in its reference to people and communities within the consultation, and that the process would benefit from better inclusion of this. We did question some of the processes which are dualled with that of local authority, for example, development and planning, and also some of the criteria for candidacy and selection considerations. The current consultation is about the process, not the actual candidacy of a designated park or potential park. And whilst trying to maintain a strategic overview, we had the context of a potential scenario of an islands-based park in our minds. The kind of language within the consultation does lend to a potential candidacy here. They're looking particularly for a park that would be wholly contained within a single authority or coterminous to a single authority. They're looking for an element of a marine park element within a designation also. Of course, it's worth bearing in mind, this isn't our first venture into potential national parks. Around 2010, the Corla held a series of meetings between members, local members here and members from Cairngorms, which is a designated park. And of course, there was expressions of interest from Harris at the time when government was considering a new park process around the 2010 period. Murdo, anything to add? Cover it?
No, nothing to add.
Happy to take any questions.
So does anyone have any questions for Mari or Murdo? No. Sorry. Oh, aye. Sorry, Councillor Finucane.
Thanks, Chair. So are you envisaging an Outer Hebrides Park, or have you any areas particularly interested? I mean, like say Harris, or is there any areas within the islands you're looking at potentially?
Not envisaging anything yet, wouldn't be so presumptuous. It is something that, we, as the consultation in the next stages of the process move forward, that we can look to consider. There would certainly be an expectation, and we try to emphasise that in our response around ensuring that the process evidenced community support for any potential candidacy, whether that was a particular area or a whole island grouping. But these are considerations to have. But there was a event as part of the consultation that just got held online, local to the islands here, and there was some community interest groups were participated in that. I can't recall, were you in on that yourself? I can't recall. There was a North Harris Trust, I think, were in on that session.
Yeah, I might have been involved. I was previously involved in the 2010 parks thing, and so I was just wondering. Yeah, no, I think I'd sort of filled it in, but I think that's just fine.
I wouldn't presume to make any judgment on an area.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mari. And just my understanding is that one national park will be identified before 2026. In the current, at least one in the current. Yeah. That's fine. So do you members agree to the recommendation at 3.1 there? Sorry.
Just one point. There has been negative feedback on national parks, and I don't know what the history and the outcome and all of the rest of it is, but I think it's a case of maybe development is not allowed when it's desired by the local community. I think that comes back to me somehow.
Been positive and negative commentary on national parks, and I think that's part of Nature Scott's intent in a very comprehensive engagement process to resolve issues and weed out what the problems are and work with communities to resolve these issues.
Yeah, that's fine. So do members agree the recommendation at 3.1 then? That's fine, thanks. So if we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is marine planning and regional marine planning update, and the report is for noting and provides an update on the regional marine planning and Crown Estate seabed lease pilot, and Mary McKeever will speak to this report and answer any questions. Mary.
Thank you, Chair. The report, as the Chair noted, it provides an update on regional marine planning and the proposed delivery of the aligned community Crown Estate pilot, and also for context provides an update on wider but related activities that have taken place since we last updated members. The proposed strategic approach previously intimated to members and agreed with Marine Scotland. It's set out in the appendix, and that remains the recommended approach. The appended table sets out resourcing and milestones anticipated to deliver the planned process and the pilot. The objectives remain ultimately to produce a regional marine plan for the Outer Hebrides marine region and to administer the Crown Estate Assets pilot. This will draw on resources committed from Marine Scotland annually and the share of Crown Estate funding previously allocated to marine planning. However, there are matters to resolve in order to progress this initiative, including funding, recruitment and management, crossover with development management functions and the progression of the seabed pilot. As indicated at the planning performance report at item 5, the planning service remains stretched and is entering another period of change and increased workload through further actions emanating from the 2019 Planning Act and the new development planning regulations. So establishment of a fully funded, dedicated staffing complement to deliver on marine planning is essential. I've nothing further to add. John, anything further to add? Big pilot.
Just to say, Chair, that the pilot's progressing towards delegation of management powers locally. We're going to share resource with Mary's team in terms of that marine planning section to deliver the pilot.
Thanks very much, John. Anyone else got any questions they want to raise? Clearly, you know, the marine environment out to 12 miles will be of significant importance to the core as we move forward, you know, particularly when we're looking, we've got 23% of the whole seawater, so the whole of Scotland, you know, in our own waters here. So it's very, very important that this progresses, and we've got a timetable at the appendix there on the direction or travel over a staged approach, and we hope that, you know, the necessary expertise on marine planners can be secured and that the funding comes from the Scottish Government take it forward. So do members agree to note the report? Yeah, thanks. So we move on to the next item is the Scottish Government consultation, Scottish highly protected marine areas. This report provides an update on the Scottish Government's consultation on the process to implement Scottish highly protected marine areas in the marine environment. This consultation is the start of the process to determine HMPA designations in Scottish waters, and Dole MacDonald will speak to the report and answer any questions. So, Dole, are you online?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Author of the report isn't able to be here today. The report, as you described, the start of a process. The consultation questions are appended to the report. The consultation closes on the 20th of March, which is prior to the next meeting of this committee. So permission is sought to delegate concluding and submitting of the Cornelius response to the Deputy Chief Executive and the Primary Industries MOUG. More than happy to try and answer any questions, though I'm absolutely certain that the Chairman today is a great deal more knowledgeable about the subject of this consultation than I.
Thanks very much, Dole. Anyone got any questions? You know, clearly this is just the start of a process, and as a chair, I won't be making any comments, you know, on anything to do, you know, with the impact that it could have on the various sectors within the community. And anyone got any questions? And do we agree with the recommendations there that authorise the Deputy Chief Executive in conjunction with Primary Industry Member Officer Working Group to conclude and submit the Cornelius response to the consultation? All I would say is, you know, that the member officer working group should be extended to the various marine sectors and processing companies and any other marine stakeholders to have an opportunity of open discussion with the Corps as they prepare their response to the consultation. So are you happy to approve the recommendation? Thanks very much. Moving on to the next one, renewables and the renewable energy update. This report provides an update on the current situation in relation to the range of renewable energy matters that the Corps is engaged in. And John Cunningham will speak to the report and answer any questions. And clearly, this report highlights the long-term ambitions of the Corps after many, many years. And we have to be thankful for the long political lobbying that this Corps and previous Corps have had over many, many years. And in particular, the important meeting that was held in this chamber on the 3rd of November this year, which shows how collectively we're all speaking with one voice, where Ofgem, SSE and all the offshore and onshore renewables were together in this chamber, and it was clear that the unity that was expressed there went a long way to making sure that the decision that was arrived at by Ofgem with the interconnector was the fruition of the long-term aims of this Corps, and the Corps has to be commended for the lobbying that it continued to do in very, very challenging times. And I remember I was involved in the marine environment myself. You know, you were one step forward and 2 steps back, and you were just wondering whether you're ever going to reach your destination. But what we have now is the opportunity, as we heard from the presentation with the Stornoway Deepwater Port, and the potential that that's going to offer the renewable sector, and in particular the officers, Callum Ian here, that's got all the scars, and John Cunningham there, you know, over that many years. And I'll pass over to John.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's 14 years now we've been reporting on grid connection to this committee. Never with very much certainty, and usually, as you say, Chair, on the basis of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But that all changed last year with the advent of the ScotWind leasing round. The most we could have hoped for over these 14 years was a 600 megawatt connection. Then ScotWind came along with gigawatts of power off the coast of the islands. And Ofgem last year, as you've said, Chair, they finally grasped that there's a threefold crisis in play with global climate change, European energy security, and local fuel poverty. And they agreed to accelerate 10.7 gigawatts of ScotWind by 2030 into the UK system. And as part of that, they approved a 1.8 gigawatt link, so 3 times what we asked for, but 3 years late. So we're grateful for that. It suits our ScotWind developers. Our onshore developers were insured initially because their contracts for difference expired in 2027, but they can now be extended, and they're content because this is a piece of national infrastructure. There's a certainty to its delivery that was never there before. We're no longer waiting for a needs case from SSE or any kind of developer commitment proof. It's an instruction from government and Ofgem to go ahead and build this link. So we are in a good place, Chair, and grateful, as you've said, to this committee for its tenacity over that period, and for the leadership of successive councils that have brought about this result. The report talks about the process that led to that decision by Ofgem, and there's an outline given of the ScotWind offshore wind leasing round, and finally an update on the net zero hub at Arnish. But happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks very much, John. And I think the other important thing is there's 325 megawatts of capacity there for any community or commercial operators that are wanting to consider for additional linkage. So good news story, and certainly, you know, we should grasp the opportunity. And I'll take in Councillor McCormack.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Cunningham, for your excellent report. I have some questions. It's just because I don't understand all of what you say. I like you, I have been very frustrated over the year as things have come and things have gone. And I want to emphasize you will not be the least bit surprised to hear just exactly what the community's position might now be and whether or not that is a sort of definite situation for community going forward as well. The whole happening is possibly entirely academic to me and possibly to you too, Mr. Cunningham. You may well be under an engine somewhere instead of in this chamber. So I have one or two questions. I'm just taking them as I came up to them. The first question is: do you think there's any possibility that construction of wind farms may take place before 2030?
Through the chair, SSE tell us they're committed to deliver this as quickly as they can. Ofgem have said to us that where a project in their list of what they call accelerated strategic transmission investments, if there's a project that's shovel ready, they will incentivize that to be delivered earlier because it'll have an impact earlier on energy security and all these other issues. So, and SSE say they're able to deliver possibly a year early, so we could see a 2029 connection possibly. That would mean construction starting 2027 onwards. That's to do with the grid connection. If it's hydrogen and the net zero hub, we might see some movement there earlier than that to supply by private wire, but that wouldn't be into the grid. The grid really would have to wait until 2030 or 2029. For the community, we do, as the chairman said, we have this headroom. The 1.8 gigawatts is not fully taken up with contracted generation at the moment, and there's a 10% piece of headroom that SSE can build in by active management of the network. So there's something of the order of 325 megawatts that might be available for other connections. The challenge we have is that the regulatory process does not allow us to prioritize communities. We've been through this over many years that unfortunately it's first come, first served. And there's a concern that if commercial generators see there's some amount of volume available, they could come in and snap it up quite quickly. So it is something we're talking to Ofgem to see if there can be some movement there. But at the moment, we cannot say that community can be prioritised.
I know, Chair, that over the years there's been this issue around transmission and distribution and the argument about. I mean, it's just a cable. Which has been denoted one thing or the other. And I'm disappointed that, in a national sense, there hasn't been a more realistic view of the grid and how best to use it. Because I don't necessarily think that it is being used to best purpose at the moment. I mean, the fact that we in the Western Isles are paying more for electricity than anybody else is just absurd. So what I'm wondering is there any way, is there ongoing discussion, say, at a national level, in the forum that you had in this chamber, is there ongoing discussion as to how there could be some advantage given to community developments? The reason I'm a convinced community developer, as you know. I think that we get a great deal from it. And I think that the challenges ahead for the bigger schemes here are significant challenges. For example, if Lewis Wind Power completes their wind farm and they're in production, then the Stornoway Trust has an opportunity to buy into that. That is a huge challenge for the Stornoway Trust. Whereas if communities in the islands wanted to build small wind farms, they could do that much more easily, much more easy to access the funding. And all we need really from national people is for them to think more advantageously and to encourage community developments. that there are communities who over the years have wanted to build their own turbine, or they might have a run of the river idea, or any kind of renewables issue like that. And it would be a real shame that if they couldn't have some way of developing that. Is there any kind of discussion going on, say at a national level, to try and make things a bit easier for community?
Chair, as I've said, the legislative position at the moment is that there's no way to prioritise community, but we are challenging that. It'll take time to get some movement on that. But the other piece of good news associated with this cable is that because it's a national piece of national infrastructure, it means that the national grid will now be located on the island. There's a thing called the MIDS, the Mains Interconnected Transmission System. We've just had confirmation from National Grid that there will be a MIDS node on the island in Lewis because of this piece of infrastructure. That's going to reduce transmission charges greatly, which was always the sticking point for communities. Ofgem are proposing to put transmission charges onto community generators. If that had happened under the old regime, they could never have built a wind farm.
No.
Now these transmission charges should reduce significantly, and that itself might be a benefit to communities. But I think the first thing for us to do is to continue lobbying for that, a section of that capacity to be retained or made available for communities.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll take in Callum just now. Can't.
The only thing I would add to that discussion, Chair, is with the interconnector and the headroom John spoke about, there's a real opportunity now for communities. But we've got to see these communities coming forward with projects. So at the moment, there's nothing that I'm aware of in planning or pre-planning.
Yeah.
So the critical thing is for us to be putting out a message to communities that there is now an opportunity here. The big interconnector, like we always said, will deliver for communities, and this is their opportunity now. So if there are communities out there thinking that they want to develop a project, now's the time for them to start doing the work and start taking that project forward. So I think we should be putting out a positive message to communities around developing a project and bringing projects forward.
I'm absolutely delighted to hear that, Chair. I must say that's music to my ears, and there are many people. I know they've been disappointed because of the way things have gone in the past, but that would be a very good message to put out. I would love to hear that message going out. And maybe I was just wondering, we haven't yet had a meeting of the Energy Moog. I wonder if maybe one of the first jobs for that would be to get in touch with communities and ask them to come back with their ideas for the future.
That's exactly what I was discussing with Callum Ian. So, you know, this is the first Sustainable Development Committee we've had since the announcement has been done, you know, that the cable is coming. So the next stage forward will be, you know, the development of the MOUG and the suitable people to attend that will be invited in, and that will include communities.
May I ask one final question?
Yes.
I know you've been very kind to me. The final question I have is the big development of the west side of Lewis. Am I right in thinking that we cannot be involved in the discussions with the developer in relation to the communities? You know, because the communities have expressed concerns about just what it all means. I don't know if anybody knows what it means yet, but is there any way? The point I'm trying to make is that I think the communities will require support. So is there some way in which we can support? The impression I have, John, is that maybe we can't because of planning regulations. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, the Corn is the planning authority for the onshore infrastructure from these wind farms. So this chamber will be considering the substations onshore, the cable route, is it overhead, is it underground? So it puts us in a difficult position as a developer to become apologists for the offshore wind schemes. We can support the community, empower them in terms of the negotiating. We cannot get into matters around how many turbines are there, where are they going, are they illuminated at night? These are all planning issues. But we are and we can support communities in the stance that they take with developers to maximise the benefit.
Thanks. Councillor Steele, leader.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just reiterate the comments you made yourself earlier about the thanks to the officers and previous administrations to get to this point. You know, it's I think people would like to have seen this report a long, long time ago, and things would have been a bit further ahead, and the community would have been in a bit of a better place in terms of the economy. But we're here, and there's opportunities ahead of us. So, thanks again to everyone who's been involved. The point I was going to make, I was going to raise it 2 items ago and 1 item ago, in terms of highly protected areas and national park consultations. Sustainable development we're talking about here. We have some really good ideas to develop our economy. There are good things out there that we'd like to do. My concern is with both of those and other areas where there's designations that could potentially be stumbling blocks and get in our way. The national park stuff. Is there a demand for it? Is there actually a need, or is it just something that arbitrarily someone thinks would be quite nice to have? And could that then become a stumbling block for what we're trying to do in the islands to encourage repopulation and boost our economy? So I raised it here rather than the previous 2, but it covers all these points. Yeah.
You're right to raise it, because there are concerns, because I would say that all those, we've had an Islands Act, 2018, that clearly identifies that we are islands and we have to have some form of protection as we move forward, and cognizance has to be taken of, if anything's having a disproportionate impact on the islands. And as you rightly say, that those designations could have significant impact on any future development. It certainly won't increase flexibility for development. That's one thing it won't do. So one has to be very careful that a full economic islands impact assessment is done very diligently and takes cognizance of the uniqueness and the added costs of living in islands. And just for reference, when it's people that would have seen, Dr. Hayes' program you see on TV of Uig there, when he came there and burned down in the 70s and early 80s, it was crofting land, the crofts full of people, and fast track 40, 50 years on. If you go over there, the crofts aren't being harvested, the people aren't out there, and it's all rushes. So one has to be very, very careful how we manage, the environment and the assets that we do have as we move forward. Yes.
So one final point, just to follow up on Councillor McCormack and Callamine's point about the communities to come forward. Now is the time to do that. Now that we've got the confirmation of the cable being in place, I think there's opportunities out there, and our friends in the press could get that message out for us as well. That would be useful. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Sorry, Mary.
Thank you. I was just going to come in on Councillor Steele's point around designations in the national park. I was trying to find it in the consultation response, but we did question what the value would be in an area like this, which is already heavily designated, of the additional designation of a national park. We also asked about island proofing as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mary. And, with that, sorry, Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. I've just got a question for John. Can the infrastructure from, say, Carloway, Burnma, Uig take it to town? Is there room on it to take it to town?
Councillor Mackenzie, please switch off your light.
It'll be new infrastructure, Councillor MacDonald. It'll be an entirely new line. Well, from see new onshore turbines. Yeah, we need to upgrade, but that would be SSE's responsibility. I'm just thinking of the ScotWind connections. But yeah, it would need upgrade. Yeah.
So, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, could we, as members of the committee, or all members, have I'm sure there is somewhere a map of where the current turbines and who owns them and what area do they represent? Because there might be there is one down in Tolsta, there's one somewhere else, and there's the, you know, the South Lochs, so forth. So that we know what the overall picture is, could we get a note of the current position? And it's good news, of course, about the 1.8. I should have said that.
Yeah, you know, officers will have that to hand. So do we all agree with the recommendation at 3.1 there? Yeah. So clearly, you know, that's excellent, you know, success story on renewables and as we move forward. Moving on to next item, food growing strategy. This report provides an update on proposals to develop a food growing strategy for the Outer Hebrides, and Murdo Mackay will speak to the report and answer any questions. Murdo.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this short report details the process that we propose that are seeking your own approval of for developing a food growing strategy, working with and through the third sector to achieve that. And we hope to come back in June with a draft strategy for your consideration and approval, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Anyone got any questions for Murdo? No. So oh, sorry, Councillor Finnegan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I noticed that going through the thing, it's really focused on food for land growing, and I just wondered, had you looked at anything in terms of in terms of new, and not just aquaculture, but other forms of growing, you know, other types of aquaculture. Because there are a number that have been looked at, and it was just really if there was any scope for that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We haven't for this particular exercise because this has really been driven by the legislation with regard to the Community Empowerment Scotland Act, and it's fairly specific in terms of that act with access to allotments and things like that. So it's been very specific, but not dealing with the marine side at all.
Thanks, Murdo. So do members agree to the recommendations at 3.1? If we move on to the Outer Hebrides Visitor Infrastructure Plan, the report is for noting and provides an update on the completion of the Outer Hebrides Visitor Plan and the Rural Tourism Infrastructure Fund, and Kathleen Morrison will speak to the report and answer any questions. Kathleen.
Thank you, Chair. This confirms the conclusion of the consultation of the Outer Hebrides Visitor Infrastructure Plan and the final document. It has been presented to Visit Scotland, who have accepted it. The following approval or agreement from the Corla and this committee. As was said previously, over 550 people did respond, and the main issues were not enough public toilets or inadequate accessible facilities as well, inadequate refuse collections and lack of bins, lack of car parking around sites throughout the islands and the settlements as well, along with access to beaches and map protection and marker signage. So all these things are included in the appendix in the draft report that you had, that's included with the report. And there is a list of projects on that too. It's a live document, so we can add to it. Just because it's not on there at the moment doesn't mean it can't be added, and we've already, there's been some highlighted that have to be included on it. The projects do have to be included on the plan to be eligible to be submitted to the next Rural Tourism Infrastructure Fund. So we'll ensure that they are included on that. Happy to take any questions.
Anyone got any questions for Kathleen? Councillor McLean.
Yep. What is the next stage? We talk here that there's inadequacies in toilet facilities. There's inadequate facilities in the town of Stornoway for toilet facilities, far less in down in Deepest Harris or Newest or whatever. What's the next? We've got all this. It's wonderful to have this, but that's okay if there's a follow-up.
Thank you. Yes, so now that the plan is completed, we can now, because Visit Scotland will only accept applications to the Rural Tourism Infrastructure, the RTIF, if the projects are included in the fund, and all those are highlighted in the plan. Now that they're in it, we can now apply for funding to develop these, and Visit Scotland are offering up to 20,000, 100% intervention rate to develop the projects, to have them ready to then apply for funding to do the capital works of them. So we are now going to be moving to that stage to take that forward.
Still not on. Yeah, it's great to look forward to toilet facilities in Luscantire and bin lorries going every second day down to Harris and such like, with all the funding that we're going to get. But obviously, that's what we're looking for, rather than the complaints that we're always getting.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chairman. I was going to congratulate you on the report, and in fact I do. I think it's excellent. It does a lot of the things that Councillor McLean says. We know there's a problem there, but it's good to have a report like this, which actually spells out the situation. I was thinking before we had the first item was the Stornoway Harbour item. You know that, for instance, that's going to bring huge economic benefits all over the islands, and obviously we have to have the facilities, you know, to cope with that, and we don't have them at the present time. As Councillor McLean says, we don't even have them in Stornoway. You know, and tourists can't even get an open toilet, you know, which is ridiculous in the centre of the town. As we know, also Stornoway has been decimated. Mackay and Co. has been mentioned, and it's getting worse and worse, and being more and more dependent on two major stores. So we hope that changes. And looking at the anticipated cruise ship passenger landings, which was referred to earlier on, in 24, 27,000, then the following year, 47,000, and then 3 years down the line, 65,000. Now that's wonderful, you know, that's great, and we hope that some sort of attempt will be made to, you know, provide adequate tourist facilities. But it can, you know, there's a double-headed thing. It can stimulate both shops in the town, bus companies, and I'm sure the bus, as it said somewhere, build it and they will come. It's the same thing, you know. Okay, we don't have the buses at the moment, but the buses will come, and somebody will cash in and, you know, use their entrepreneurial mind to, you know, working out how to cope with this. So hopefully all these things will come to pass, but I'm concerned for the immediate future that, and I hope that this will enable applications to be made for finance, you know, capital finance, to follow these things out. Because at the present time, you know, we're talking about only 3 years down the line, and it's going to be 6 times actually, 6 times the number of cruise passengers that we had just before COVID. 6 times, from 10,000 to 15,000 up to 65,000. You know, well, not 6 times. So let's hope that we can make the most of it, but at the same time, we have to be able to apply for money wherever. And I hope that, you know, the various schemes that are going through just now will assist us in this.
Yeah, thanks very much. And as Kathleen, you know, made very clear, you know, the forum that is been established will be covering all those points, Councillor Mackenzie. So, convener, Councillor MacLeod.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kathleen, for that very comprehensive report. And interesting to hear what the other members are saying. We definitely need, improved tourism, the infrastructure at some of our facilities, and that presentation, and as Councillor Mackenzie alluded to there, the number of, cruise ships and passengers going to increase substantially in the next few years. I'm going to put something out there. It might be controversial to certain members in here, but if maybe once every 5 years, we'll look at half of the Crown Estate funding going towards tourism infrastructure projects, because it'll benefit every community in the Western Isles. It's something we should seriously think of going forward. Maybe once every 5 years of the funding. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks very much, convener, and that's discussion for another day. Councillor Macaulay.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. Yeah, I could agree with the convener, believe it or not. But I think some of the Crown Estate funding should be pulled in certain areas and given to things like that. My understanding this year is that the cruise ships buses won't be going to Ness at all because there's no toilet facilities in Ness, and that's a decision taken off the island by the powers that be over there. So yeah, it's very important that we sharpen up, and now's the time to do it.
Councillor Finnegan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just feel that the funding is never going to be enough, to be honest. And I thought we've looked at other options in the past. I mean, that's one option there that's Kenny's put forward. And I just wonder if it's maybe really now seriously time to really revisit that option, that other option that we've discussed in the past, because I think even if you got all the funding that was available, which we won't, it's still not going to be enough going forward, I think. So we need to look at other options really seriously now.
Yeah, that's fine, because certainly, the road structure everywhere throughout the Western Isles is in desperate need of investment. So, you can't attract all the coaches and all those big other coaches and other things that will be attracted. You must have at least the basic services of a decent road, and we're far from that at the moment. And I think investment in roads and toilets or whatever is paramount as we move forward. So thanks very much. And do you agree with the to note the report? Yeah, that's fine, thanks. And if we move on to next item, Creative Industries Organisation Revenue Funding. This is the annual report seeking to agree funding assistance to the key creative industries organisations for next year. The table at 2.2 of the report details the proposed exit strategy for a number of festivals which had been previously supported annually by the Comhairle over an extended period. The report was also considered by Committee na Gaelic last week when they agreed the recommendations for their interests, and Modo Mackay will speak to the report and answer any questions. Modo.
Thank you, Chair. As you've just set out, the funding for this year is the same as previous years for all the groups and organisations supported. And then from 24-25 onwards, 4 of those Fashion groups, Headcelt, EDF, Keolis and the Fashion na Gael, will see a reduction of funding over the following 2 years. And the Launder and the Hershebach funding is proposed to stay the same. And this was obviously following a discussion and decision taken by the Budget Board, and happy to take any questions that council may have.
And anyone got any questions? Councillor Mackenzie?
Well, I will move against that because I'm not happy with it. I will listen to the reasons put forward. I'm surprised that it's been accepted by the Comhairle Gaelic, but I know these different organisations depend so much on finance from the council. Maybe somebody will tell me that that there will be other finance coming, definitely coming, which will make up for this. But I can't understand, how it's been reduced to nothing by 2026. And I'll certainly move against it unless there's a very good reason why I shouldn't.
Councillor Macaulay.
Yeah, my understanding from this is that this is only setting up a discussion with these groups. I take it after the discussion with these groups, it's going to come back to us to make the final decision. Would that be correct?
Well, the recommendation is that there's an exit strategy for those groups, 4 groups mentioned, and discussions would commence once the decisions are taken. But given that they've got the current year's 23-24 funding, this next year's funding agreed without a drop, it would be discussions for them for the following that year, and there'll be a gradual reduction over the next 2 years.
Sorry, that's not the way I'm reading it, Murdo, but I appreciate where you're coming from. It therefore propose to enter discussions with these organisations with a view to a 3-year exit strategy. So it's the council's view to have a 3-year exit strategy, but this is pending discussions with the organisations. So surely will come back to us afterwards, no?
Well, my understanding is that the decisions of the budget board were that that would be the cut to the budgets, but the discussions are always taken in the year prior. So we haven't had any discussions because we're talking about funding for the next financial year. So for the following financial year, 2024 onwards. And then we would have discussions, but my understanding is that the recommendation would be that the funding, there's an exit strategy agreed by the committee going forward.
So the budget board has the power to make that decision then?
No. The budget board is a board that, sorry, pass on to Callum yet.
I was just going to say, Chair, it was a discussion at the budget board, and the budget board's recommended way forward was the exit strategy. But at the end of the day, it is up to both the committee to decide that this is what it wants to do, and it's up to Policy and Resources to decide that it wants to take this reduction as part of the overall budget setting. So, it is up to the committee to agree this. So the budget board considered it, and it recommended that this would be one of the ways that economic development would contribute to the financial savings the council has to make in this year. So it is part of our overall budget setting mix. So most of the organisations on here, Heb Celtic, DF Cause and the Fashion Movement, they have been supported significantly over a long number of years. Some of them most of them since their inceptions in the Outer Hebrides. It is not uncommon for us to be supporting other organisations for a period, helping them to get on their feet and helping them to become self-sustaining and to put an exit strategy in place around it. So this is the exit strategy for these organisations. So as Murdo said, in the first year, they are getting the same level of support. So that gives them a period of time to plan in and work through where they may get alternative sources of funding for, and we're happy to sit and work with them and engage with them and try and help them find these alternative sources of funding. But and happily as it is, this is the only source of funding left in economic development to contribute to the council's overall budget reductions.
Thanks very much, Callum. And I'm just noting, that this was considered by Community Gaelic last week, and they agreed to the recommendations that was relevant to them. Convener, do you have anything to say? You're on Community the Gaelic. They agreed with recommendations, yes. I was sorry.
Yes, we agreed to the recommendations.
Yeah, because I was absent from the committee, so it's clear that. Derek.
Sorry, Chair, just to confirm, Comedy Gaelic agreed the recommendations insofar as related to the contributions from the skip and the Gaelic budget.
Yeah. Councillor Mackenzie.
Well, I'm shocked at this, quite honestly, and I can't speak Gaelic. I can only understand a bit of it, but £34,000 to support these different organisations, and it's going to be cut to nothing. And I'm surprised that that decision was taken at the budget board. I'm surprised it was taken last week. I'm surprised that I haven't had an answer to the question I put, which was, where are they getting the money? Where's the alternative funds coming from? I mean, I'm going to move against it. Okay. I'll move now against it if it's time for that and there's no more discussion.
I'll take in the leader, Councillor Steele.
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, obviously the budget board doesn't take decisions, it makes recommendations, and the discussion we had there, as this will probably come up in the next wee while, but was to look at the exit strategy. This is what's proposed, as Calvin pointed out. We're having to make some difficult decisions on savings. Next year is going to be even more difficult unless the situation changes significantly. So I think actually having these discussions with these agencies early on, making this decision just now, it makes sense in terms of making sure that they're able to fund what they need to fund, and we'll help them to do that. Should that be from other revenue sources? I mean, the one that jumps out is potentially Crown Estate, even though it gets used for most things. But these discussions can happen, and there are other areas for drawing in funding. So I think having that discussion with them, if it's not possible, then that's a decision we'll have to make again next year. At the moment, I think there's a sensible strategy in terms of going forward, knowing the situation we're in with our budgets this year and potentially, well, definitely next year.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Steele. Councillor Mackenzie.
That doesn't answer. There seems to be contradictory information coming here. Are you moving forward to discuss this matter with these organisations with a view to asking them or telling them that they're going to have their funds cut after this year, or has a decision been taken that their funds are going to be cut and they've been told this information already? I mean, it's either one way or another.
No, with all due respect, Councillor Mackenzie, they haven't been told because the decision hasn't been made and agreed by council yet. It's at this. What will happen is that PNR will be discussing budgets next week, and they'll be making the final decision, on the budget, and then the exit strategy was discussed by the budget board. No one raised any concerns at the budget board. So what was discussed at the budget board has been reflected, and where there were varying opinions on what was there, it was noted, and those are included in what will come to PNR in respect of some of the items that go to PNR. So at the moment, the recommendation before us is at 3.1, and that's for the exit strategy, as we're seeing here, all the way from A to G. And Councillor Morrison, were you wanting to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just to get a bit of clarity from the Deputy Chief Executive. This aside, I mean, I thought we had a discussion in the previous term with all these organisations to say there'd be a reduction in funding and there'd be a plan going forward from here whenever we agreed that, because I remember it did come across my radar, and I think we were in discussion with them to say that the funding would be reduced over the year. Now, I'm not sure whether that dovetails with what we have today, but it's just to get clarity that that has happened and that these organisations are aware that their funding was going to be cut.
Yes, Chair, we've had discussion over a long period with all these organisations, so that their funding over, I don't know, the last number of years has slowly been reducing. So this is, to all intents and purposes, the next stage where we're exiting out completely from that ongoing support. So there have been discussions over the last 5 years, maybe. Nobody's funding has stayed level. It has been coming down incrementally year on year, but this is now agreeing a final exit from supporting these organisations.
Thanks very much, Calamian. So, Councillor Mackenzie.
Well,
Well, I'll take in Councillor McLean because he hasn't been in, so.
Thanks, Chair. Just to tell Councillor Mackenzie, I was on the budget board. I'm sure there's other people here. And the reductions that we had to make or were making that day were eye-starkingly desperate. The situation that we were in financially was desperate. This is but little. A three year, I'm just trying to clarify, Mr. Councillor Mackenzie, 3 to 4 year reduction. There is worse than that reduction in other aspects. Those people who are on the budget board with me could testify to what's called managed deterioration is what the terms were used. It is so stark. The finances that we are getting this year from Scottish government is so reduced that everything that the council is doing, I'm sure the deputy chief executive would bear that up, is reduced. So it's not an easy solution. I agree with you, but just to put you into, I'm sure it'll come up at the next week or whenever the next budget meeting is.
Thanks, Councillor McLean. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, well, I hear all that. We've got one item before us just now, and that's what we're dealing with. And I know what my own opinion is about it. I think these are 4 organisations which affect probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people throughout the island. And I would like to move that well, I'm not sure if it's an amendment, but basically I want to cut out G and to retain that there be no cut. In other words, the 34,000, which has been cut off, be not cut off. So you can phrase that any way you like, but basically that there should not be a cut made, that the present level for 23-24 should be retained, and these further subsequent cuts be not made.
That's fine. That's what you're proposing. So along with that proposal, where would the funding that you're proposing come from? No, but with all due respect, you see, if you're putting forward that the recommendation here is, my understanding is that any other motion that's being put forward must identify. Is that right, Column?
Sorry, that doesn't, that's never come up before. Certainly at budgeting time, that has. Sorry.
Well,
Well,
my
I
understanding.
accept that. Okay, tick it off the travel budget. Thank you.
So, Column.
I'm not quite sure I follow what Mr. Mackenzie means by the travel budgets. There are various travel budgets across the corner, so we would have to go and examine and identify appropriately where that proposal is coming from. So at the moment, what we've got is an exit strategy that is part of the overall budget. So that'll be discussed by Policy and Resources next week. So if this is taken as part of the overall budget reduction, and you are wanting to take that, Mr. Mackenzie, you would have to identify where that alternative funding is coming from. So your proposal is travel budget. So we'd have to sit down and work out exactly what that means, what travel budget, and exactly where you're proposing that to come from.
Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie, I'll read you the every motion and amendment proposing either expenditure or reduction in income shall identify the source of funding to meet the additional expenditure income lost.
I accept that.
Yeah.
Chairman, I move that we only deal with this year 23-24, retain it as it is, then consider it next year.
Well,
and that doesn't affect
that with all due respect, that's what they're doing.
That's
Derek. So they're keeping this year as it is.
I know.
Derek.
Just clarifying, as Councillor Mackenzie is wanting is approval of recommendations A to F, which is the current year's funding, which is subject to approval of the budget at the budget setting meetings, but not approving recommendation G. Or are you approving recommendation G in principle to allow the discussions to take place?
Well, I'm prepared to accept that if my original motion is not acceptable, then we deal purely with 23, 24, and that doesn't affect any budgets. And we retain that and then see what the position is the following year. Is that acceptable?
Derek.
Sorry, retaining the budget in any future year is going to be subject to funding being identified. If you're approving recommendations A to F, that is from next year's budget. And again, you're essentially proposing the recommendations in the report with the exception of G. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll accept that. Yeah. That's what I said initially, actually.
Do we have a seconder for that? Francis is seconding that. That's fine. Yeah. Well, we'll move to the debate, you know, your amendment, Councillor Mackenzie here. The amendment gets debated first of all.
I think if I said any more, everybody would run out of the room, so I've said enough. Yeah.
But sorry, Terry.
So you just need a formal mover, a proposer and seconder for the recommendations in the report.
Yeah, so we're looking for someone to move the, yeah, so the leader who's seconding the recommendation in the report. Councillor McCormack. So do you want to debate the motion and the amendment, or do you want to go to a straight vote? I think, you know, it's been discussed in plenty of detail. So are you wanting to go to a straight vote on it? Yeah. So, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the point about recommendation G is going to come in front of us again next year at budget setting. The point is we're wanting to go and speak to these organisations just now to kind of prep them. This is what probably is going to happen. It might not be, but I think the whole point of G is it gives the officers empowers them to go and have that discussion. So what you're saying, I'm in agreement with. I'd rather give them that money next year. Hopefully we'll get a better settlement, but I think we need to be realistic at this current stage. Give the officers the opportunity to go and have these discussions. So I don't know if there really is a need for G to come out, because we probably will have to have these discussions anyway. Would you be willing to accept that? No. Okay. Fair enough.
That's fine. So, Francis.
Thank you. Very, very brief point. Thank you, Chair. Looking at the risk, the loss of key arts organisations and cultural infrastructure is what stands out to me, given that we've spent quite a lot of today talking about bringing people in to the island on cruise ships. We need to have something there for them to see and to benefit from, and therefore I support the amendment.
That's fine. Thanks very much. So, Derek.
Chair, did I understand? I couldn't see the reactions from everyone here. You've agreed to go straight to the vote.
Yes.
That would usually be by. Sorry, I can't see who's online. Do we have any members of the committee online?
Do we have? We've got Robert.
I would suggest
Ronald Fraser.
I would suggest you, we do a roll call vote of members. And the recommendations in the report usually are the motion. So the motion is approval of recommendations A to G in the report as proposed by the leader and seconded by, sorry, I didn't see. Councillor McCormack.
Councillor McCormack.
And the amendment is the approval of recommendations A to F as proposed by Councillor Mackenzie, seconded by Dr. Murray. So
Yeah.
members would be asked to call out the roll and members would be asked to say motion or amendment.
So you do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'll just do a roll call then. So for the motion, Councillor McNeil, Councillor Steele, Councillor Fulton, Councillor Mackenzie, who is online,
Motion.
Councillor Morrison, Councillor Norman MacDonald, Councillor Kenneth McLeod, Councillor Johnny McKeever, Councillor Ian Macaulay, Councillor McInnes,
Motion.
Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor McCormack, Councillor Murray. That's all the members of the committee. So that is 9 for the original motion and 4 for the amendment.
So the motion's carried. So that's fine. So if we move on to the next item is Ballymune saying, do you want a 10-minute or comfort break? Sorry? Just Ballymune suggesting, we could be quite some while through the next 2 items. Yeah, we'll carry on then. So if we move on to the next item, housing funding agreements 2023-24. The report concerns the proposed housing-related funding arrangements for 2023-24, and Ian Watson will speak to report and ask any questions. Ian, I'll pass on to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report we submit to committee every year, and it's in relation to funding support to 2 key partner agencies that assist us in delivering different aspects of the local housing strategy. There's the Western Isles Foyer, who provide support to young people in relation to housing and homelessness, and CHESS, the Energy Advisory Service, which is part of Pegin and Tregal, who provide energy efficiency advice to the community. Both partner agencies have performed well throughout the last year. It's been a challenging year for both of them, but they have assisted in the delivery of the key tasks of energy advice and preventing homelessness. So the report recommends that the funding, that's £30,000 for the foyer and £39,000 for the Energy Advisory Service, is approved to enable them to continue. We've also got an outstanding commitment to invite the foyer to the committee to give a presentation on the work they do, and they're hoping to come along to the next meeting in April to give a wee presentation to members. Happy to take any questions, members.
Thanks very much, Ian. Anyone got any questions for Ian? So do members agree the recommendations at 3.1? Thanks. Then moving on to the next item, housing need and demand assessment 2023 to 2028. The report provides an update on the draft housing need and demand assessment 2023 to 2028 and seeks to delegate authority to approve the HNDA to Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the Chair Prior to submission to the Scottish Government in February, the draft HNDAs provided as an annex to the report for your consideration, and Angela Smith will speak to the report and answer any questions. Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as the Chair mentioned, the HINDA has to be carried out every 5 years. It's a statistical exercise carried out at a point in time, which forms an evidence base for the land element of the local development plan and for the local housing strategy. Appendix 1 to the report is the HINDA document itself, and Appendix 2 forms the specialist provision templates. And between them, there's 170 pages. I don't plan to go through everything in detail. You'll be delighted to hear, but I will lead with some headline information for you. Apologies to those who have been in the MOUG who've heard this before. So in terms of the HINDA itself, it's evident that demographics are a key to everything that we do. There are some positives. The NRS estimates an increase of 0.5% or 140 persons in 2021. There's been positive net migrations of 320 persons between 2020 and 2021. However, there's a projected population decline overall. From the 2018 estimates, the population is projected to fall by -6.1% by 2028 and -16% by 2043. However, the further away we go, the less certain the estimates become. Population change is negative across all island areas other than Barra, which has seen a 3.5% increase. Our population is projected to get older. Young people, the 15 to 19 age group in particular, is still leaving, but at a slower rate, which is a good point. The number of households are falling, although one-person households are projected to increase by 2%. We are in a position whereby we might be in a position of oversupply at some point, and we need to be mindful of this when we move towards setting a housing supply target. In terms of the property market, property sales increased by 38% between 2020 and 2021 to 2021, 2022 over the year, and this will affect supply and drive prices up as there's a finite supply of homes for sale in our islands. This could mean a need for more affordable options. Average property price is over 144,000 now. It's seen an increase of 17% since 2019-20. The average income is 19,318, which is 12% lower than the Scottish average. So if we use the 3.9% average, 3.9 times average multiplier, a hefty deposit is required to buy on the open market. The cost of living crisis that we're experiencing at the moment will also impact those who are able to afford a mortgage. The value of sales increased by 38% from 44 million in 2020-21 to 61 million in 2021-22, and that's considerable. There's more information on pages 55 and 56 of the document. We're uncertain how long this can continue. Between 2015 and 2016 and 2019-20, 68% of properties sold were to those already living in the islands, which is a good news story for us. Homelessness remains at a consistent level despite partnership efforts to alleviate it. We don't know enough about stock condition in the private sector. The Scottish House Condition Survey is carried out every 2 years, but the sample size is very small. The last one from 2017 to 2019, the sample size was 273. We've also been informed that ScotStat, who compile the data, are unable to complete the 2019 to 21 survey as there's no 2020 data available. The next survey that they anticipate producing will be from 2022 to 2024, and we expect to see the data in 2026. So this is problematic for us as we use this regularly to build up a picture of house condition in the Outer Hebrides. So we need to consider how we go about collating house condition data in the interim. Fuel poverty remains an issue. The latest research by TIG and Energy Action Scotland suggests that with the projected price increases in April 2023, it's likely that between 70 and 80% of households in the islands will be in fuel poverty, and that's incredibly sobering. In terms of the social housing sector, HHP carries out stock condition surveys regularly. Their stocks are generally in good condition and rents are affordable. We have the highest number of vacant properties in South Uist and in Harris, and the highest number of second homes are in Barra and Battersea, Harris and North Uist. The business survey that we conducted indicates businesses were being impacted by the lack of properties to buy or to rent, and particularly in Harris, but there are 30 homes planned in the SHIP over the next few years. Empty Homes project has had success in bringing properties back into use, but at this point we have no control over how they are used. The community trusts and landlords are having a positive impact in their areas, and there's more information on page 46 on what the work that they're carrying out and the impact they're having. We can use our housing market to support things like the Islands Deal, local businesses and population growth, for example, Youth Resettlement Project, and more information on that on page 41. We also need to use our housing environment to support specialist provision, particularly with regard to adaptations funding. Our population is getting older, so how do we help people to remain in their homes for longer if we don't have adequate funding? We would like to support our IJB partners in the work that they do. We prepare a housing contribution statement every 3 years or so. And the next iteration of the housing contribution statement is underway at the moment. There's indicative content on page 99, and this includes consideration of workforce housing options, which we know has been problematic for the IJB. So the HINDA, and the inside cover of the HINDA, there's a template that shows you an estimate of additional future housing units. So this is not the number of homes that we'll be building. For that, we need to consider the housing supply target, which is the next stage after the HINDA is complete. We would look at HHP's turnover, relets, allocations and applications that they receive annually, the financial capacity of our partners, HHP, TIG, IJB and so on, Scottish Government funding, the units that we have in development and what we have on the ground, what is planned over the duration of the SHIP, the capacity of the construction industry, policy considerations and aspirations, both local and national, and economic considerations and aspirations, and all the while keeping in mind our population and household projections and oversupply. So what's next after the HINDA? We're seeking delegation for the HINDA to be approved by the Chair of Sustainable Development and the Deputy Chief Executive. We are awaiting one piece of information on requirements for student housing from UHI, and once that comes, it'll be slotted into the document. We have a further meeting with the Housing Market Partnership prior to submission to the CHMA, the Centre for Housing Market Analysis of the Scottish Government. That is on, that's in a couple of weeks' time. We also have a meeting, a co-meeting with the Strategic Local Programme Group and the Housing Market Partnership on the 16th, which is the day after Corla, to start looking at our strategic priorities, and then we'll be able to work towards a housing supply target that is realistic, achievable, that doesn't compromise our sole RSL, but that does support our strategic priorities and our population initiatives. And we'll prepare the housing supply target in consultation with all key partners. So I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thanks very much, Angela, for very comprehensive and wide-reaching document, that contains significant information that is of value to the core as we move forward. One of the things I noted in it was, the shared equity, that there seems to be much greater reduction in demand for shared equity now. Is that all throughout the island, sir?
Yes, it's in respect of the last number of developments that HHP have done, they've reported approximately 50% drop in applications and notes of interest for shared equity. And rural shared equity, the units in BSLA took a lot longer to sell than anticipated. So they did flag that up, and they asked for a rewrite of the section of the HINDA. So.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone got any questions for Angela? Councillor Finnegan?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly off the point here, maybe. We talked in the past about the SHIP, the 43 million, and there was a possibility that HHP had stated that they couldn't spend all of that. And we looked at a number of other options, and I just wondered to bridge the difference. And I just wondered how far we got with that in terms of actually identifying and nailing down that extra money that required to be spent.
Councillor McCormick, could you put off your white light, please?
Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and answer that one. There's been a number of things we've looked at. You're probably aware that we've made approaches to Scottish Government officials and to the Cabinet Secretary for Housing on a number of occasions to try and see if we can get that flexibility to use some more of that money out with the core programme at HSP deliver. And we're in the process of looking at doing something with some of the empty houses that Angela mentioned, a substantial number in the islands. We're trying to see if we, in fact, we've been given the green light by the Scottish Government to purchase a number of the properties, and we'll target these for remote rural areas, do the houses up to a decent standard and either rent them out or sell them to first-time buyers. We're also looking at using some of that money to introduce the Partnership Support for Regeneration Scheme. This is a scheme that's aimed at developers to build houses for sale, and there's an element of grant can be added into that from the money that's available. So we've just asked TIG to look at being our sort of managing agent for that, to start conversations with the local developers and builders to see if any of them would be interested in doing that. So that would add a new tenure stream into the housing market as well. And I understand there's a meeting taking place next month as well. I believe the Deputy Chief Executive is going to be meeting with the Cabinet Secretary to again discuss the possibility of using this money more creatively on the island.
Thanks very much, Ian. Councillor Finnegan.
So up to now, so how much of has actually been identified up to now that of that extra money that's actually been allocated? I mean, obviously there's going to be meetings, but it seems to be rather still up in the air. And my understanding is it's got to be allocated by April 26th. So I'm just trying to find out where we're sitting with that extra at the moment, you know, because it obviously still seems to be quite a bit in the air at the moment. And obviously we obviously want to build as many houses as we can, and we don't want to be giving any money back. So I'm a bit concerned, I have to say, about how it's where it's going to go. You know, I'm just feeling time's going on, and I just feel that money is sitting out with, and I just want to. It'd be good if we could nail it down in some shape or form.
Thanks, Chair. We've got some estimates of what we think the potential spend could be if all these projects I mentioned come to pass. So the Partnership Support for Regeneration has got potential for spending around about £5 million. And it's one of these schemes, if it's successful in the early years, then we'd hope to see that would expand in the later years of the SHIP and beyond the SHIP, if at all possible. So at the moment, we're estimating around about £5 million. We're also hoping that the empty homes will be able to utilise about £2.5 million. And again, if that is successful, then we'd hope to be able to expand that in years to come. And the third thing I should have mentioned, we're looking to do some land banking as well. On the back of the feasibility work we do to identify land, there might be some sites that would be possible to purchase and keep for a number of years before developing. So there's potential for spending about £300,000 a year in acquiring land. So that's underway at the moment. We're looking to see if there's any plots that could be purchased and kept for 2 or 3 years, kept for a rainy day, so to speak, and then developed for housing. So that would take us to about 35 million. If everything came to pass. So that would still leave a bit of funding that's unallocated. But it's going to be a challenge to spend all the money. We understand from the Scottish Government officials that every council in the north of Scotland is in the same boat. It's going to be a challenge to spend all the money that's been set aside through the resource planning assumption. But we'll certainly try and see if we can make a substantial dent in that funding.
Thanks very much, Ian, and welcome, you know, the increased flexibility that will give for spend. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not on your committee. I just want to kind of share Councillor Finnegan's concerns a bit, but I'm glad to hear that we're looking at 35 million of a spend. It's a surprise to me. So it's a good surprise. I mean, it's a huge sum of money to spend. I mean, we all understand that by the time it's match funded, but it's also a huge opportunity for us, and for HHP. But, we're 18 months into it. And I mean, I'm not curious. I know that both Mr. McKeever here and Mr. McKeever at HHP have a huge job in front of them to try and allocate. I was also glad to hear that we don't have to spend it by 2026, but we have to allocate it, which again is a huge difference, between spending and allocating. But I would like to have it all allocated by 2026. We've, you know, for instance, we've got 49 on the waiting list in Harris. We've got over 100 between Bernary and Battersea. I would like to see as close to 49 houses being built in Harris or allocated by 2026 as possible. I would like to see over 100 in Bernary to Battersea, as close as we can get to that as possible. And in Stornoway, we've got 240, 250 on the waiting list. But of course, hindered by the 55-45 agreement that was made here, which I hope that will be revisited in June. So you know, we have the MOG, but I also think we're kind of missing a wee trick. We're not really using. There was a meeting at the beginning with contractors at the very beginning, and I think these meetings should have continued, because these guys are the guys who are, as you would say, at the coal face. They know exactly what's going on with land. They know exactly where land is available. They know. I mean, we're doing all these looking into if houses can be built here and there, and half the time we get told, no, that land's no good. These guys, most of them that I know anyway, they can tell by looking if it's going to be feasible to build at 99% of the time. So I think we have to try and start using and utilising the expertise of these contractors from Lewis right down to Barra. And involve them in any talks we have, and you know, anything we're trying to do. Again, I know that it's not an easy job, but we heard there about the presentation about from the Pier and Harbour, how everything has gone so well because of collaboration between the Pier and Harbour and the contractors working out there. And I think we have to involve them more, and you know, get them on board and help us to spend the money. I mean, like I say, it's not I wouldn't envy anyone's job here to try and spend this money, but like I say, it's a huge sum of money, but it's a huge opportunity to you know, to get rid of quite a lot of our housing waiting list. And I hope by 2026 there'll be 43 million allocated.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with many of the points Finlay makes there. I do envy being able to spend that much money though, but maybe not with the restrictions that they're facing. And I think it's flexibilities around the system that we're looking for. My point was about the housing need and demand assessment itself. I wondered, where does, you know, in terms of different tenures, where does self-build fit into that?
Angela, anything on self-build or?
Angela, I was saying that in terms of different tenures for the housing needs and demand assessment, where does self-build fit into the assessment?
Well, on go to page 89, there's scenario outputs on page 89, and it splits into the tenures of social rent, below market rent, private rent, and buyers. The HINDA doesn't really allow for such a self-build. It's the tool itself is more aligned to urban environment. But I guess it would probably, I would probably slot it into buyers. That's kind of an owner occupier, but that's probably where I would slot it.
Yeah, thanks. So certainly we welcome the flexibility that Mr. Wharton was saying that they're looking at doing, and the increased expenditure that could create. Councillor Macaulay.
Thanks, Chair. With regard to shared equity and the slowdown reflected this year, is it maybe considered, would I be correct in saying that the ones that weren't being sold are maybe perhaps because they were the 3-bedroom rather than the 2-bedroom? And if there is going to be future ones, maybe to concentrate on the 2-bedroom ones, because as I note in your report, that the demand for resales of the 2-bedroom is still relatively high, and maybe it's a price point of the 3 bedrooms that we're picking people off, and maybe it's the way forward is to keep on with the 2-bed. Just a thought.
Angela.
Yep. Yeah. We did discuss this with HHP, and they do when they are going to be doing shared equity properties, they do research the market quite well. They do request expressions of interest, so they kind of know the types and sizes of homes that they would potentially need to build. But one of the comments that they said was that the people who are potentially who had put applications in to purchase properties were at the cusp of the maximum mortgage they could get, and that with cost of living pressures was making people a bit wary.
Do you want to come back in, Councillor Macaulay?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate that, but that was perhaps because there were a lot of 3-bedroom properties up in that particular development, and they were nearing the £200,000 mark. Whereas the 2 bedrooms were about the £140,000 mark, and it was more affordable. But yeah, just a point.
Yeah, thanks very much. So, sorry, Councillor McLean.
I think I'll defer to the lady on my right here, and because she's going to say something about the self-build. I could see that when she came in, she was determined to take over anyway, so I might as well.
Well, you put off your light, Councillor McLean.
I was just going to come in on the statistics around self-build, just to assist Angela on that. I mean, the housing land audit does detail the kind of profile of self-build. We have seen that. We do that biennially every 2 years, the housing land audit. We have seen the proportion of self-build fall, and that was even in advance of the cost of living crisis and difficulties around accessing self-build mortgages and the like. But it is a proportion of the housing provision here in tenure.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Manny. So, anyone got?
Although I gave it permission to take over, I didn't mean
I thought it was a substitute.
Together.
But you had gone on.
I think now that I've let her in, she'll agree with me always on the nonsense of net zero or whatever. So I'm sure we've had this discussion before, but can I have 2 or 3 points here? First of all, I'm going back to the ship. And as I see it, and as I've been told, and Ian can qualify this, in the ship, of the 22 sites mentioned in the ship, only 3 are owned by HHP. Is that correct? Maybe I should have asked you how many are owned by rather than putting my number in.
Thanks, Chair. Again, it goes back to the way the ship is structured. It's like a long-term prediction, if you like, we would like to see houses built. So because of the challenge we have in identifying land, a lot of the land isn't identified and therefore not purchased in later years, like year 3, 4 and 5. Like the Deputy Chief Executive said, it's sort of like a gauge of what we could potentially build there. But the HSP purchases sites when they know it can be developed. So once they're assured that their site can be developed and it will get through planning and it'll be cost effective to build it, then they'll purchase the site there. They've got to go through the process of the feasibility work beforehand to make sure that they're not buying a site that can never be developed, and to make sure that any hidden things are brought to light before the sales go through. So there will be limited numbers of sites actually owned by HSP or the council in the ship. That's just the way it's drawn up. Again, it goes back to leaving a bit of flexibility, so we're not tied in, we're not constraining ourselves to a certain area or a certain development, and leaves up opportunities open for windfall sites coming up. But to answer your question again, it's there will be small numbers of sites.
If I were a developer, with this amount of number of houses, I'd be looking at certainly more than 3 out of 22 being owned at this stage. I'm a bit wary. I don't know about any of the other one. I'm a bit concerned. No, not a bit, really concerned about the way HHP are managing the sites? That's the first one. Second one, how many units over the past number of years have been built in a year? Would you say that it was close to 30 in a year? If it is, and I've been told it's close to 30 or 35, again, that's a troubling statistic.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have the figures to hand. We can certainly get hold of them for you to show you a breakdown going back, back to 5-6 years to give you a picture there. But I don't have the figures to hand. But it could. It just. Oh, maybe I do. Sorry. Yeah, from the Hunda, table 3.5, new build stock added between 2016 and 22. There's been, in total, there's been 229 new houses added since 2016.
That's 6 years ago.
5, 6, 7 years.
7 years. 216 divided by 7, pretty close to 30. Am I right?
Yeah, so you knew the answer to your question before you
Pardon?
asked it. Did you know the answer?
I didn't. But I thought I had heard that it was roughly in that figure. Again, Chair, would you consider that troubling? And to put it all to you, this isn't in the way we're going to house. The other one, and the last one is, if HHP were to spend all the money, would they be how many units would they be able to put up? And I'm talking about between now and 2027.
Well, that would depend on the area they was building it in, Councillor MacLean, because it's more expensive to build in certain areas than in others. And depending on,
I think if you're working, I'm looking at you and your capacity should know if you're talking about bald fact figures or whatever they call them. You could roughly say that roughly a house will cost about 200,000. I think was it Dion that said that? Roughly 200,000. Well, if my figures are right, you'll get 5 for $1 million. Is that right, Mr. McCormack? 200 times 5 is about $1 million. So then you've got 43 plus 43 million plus the other millions. I don't know how much is there. So therefore, we're talking about certainly in the region of 300 to 400 units. That could be built, but cannot be built at the rate of 35. If you talk about 30 or 35 a year, you're going to take 10 years. Little wonder you've got 10 years in that. That's 10 years, you're right. You compare that to mainland construction, and I know you've different capacity with builders and that. They're putting up 3 to 4 or 5 times the amount of houses that are going to appear, at least. I'm just saying
just the only comment of that, Councillor MacLean, is that cost of housing's gone up significantly since, 2016, the start of that. So that has to be reflected,
I would expect you to come in with an objection, Chair, but no,
I'm not.
You're still, as Ian Macaulay said, roughly about 200,000 from the mortgage man here. So he's actually got his figures. So there we are. So we've got that. So we could, but are we going to get it? First of all, have they got the sites, and have they got the how can I put it, the zest, the zeal, the ambition to build these houses? I'm just leaving it at that.
Thanks very much. And I think you raised some interesting points there, Councillor MacLean. And certainly, what the member officer working group with HHP and all the others are round the table, I think there's further discussion should take place with those other agencies.
I think the scale of ambition that Mr. MacLean has outlined is what we should be trying to do. And I think the scale of ambition that Mr. MacLean has outlined is achievable in a non-constrained environment. But in the realities that we're working to, I wish we had no constraints. I wish we had a huge land supply, that land was coming in all the time, that the cost pressures we're facing weren't there. There's a whole range of different things that if they weren't there, we would build at much faster speed. But we've just got to deal with the reality of the world we're in, not the world we wished we were in.
Yeah.
The reality is that if you speak to contractors, and you speak to contractors anyway, Mr. McKeever, when you speak to contractors, the contractors are actually saying they are able to do it. Am I correct?
People say they're able to do a lot of things. The reality might be different.
Well, that's fine. We've given that one a significant hearing. So do members agree the recommendation at 3.1 there? Yeah, thanks. And the final item on the agenda is reports outstanding, and that's for noting unless anyone's got any comments on it. So that's fine. So thanks for your attendance here today, and the next scheduled meeting of the committee will be on 25th April 2023. Thanks very much.